How did you get interested in playing football, and what was your motivation for wanting to play football?
Well, I mean, like I said, we're a football family, but I have an older brother. He's 6 years older than me, and he got into playing football. And of course, as long enough as I could walk, I was at a ball field, whether it was baseball or football. And my mom has a picture when I was 2 years old, my first football helmet on, playing football against my brother in the yard, and I just fell in love with the game from an early age. And my dad kind of stuck me in youth league a little earlier when I was 5 instead of 6. And I just never missed a season. It was always my favorite sport to play growing up, and got a lot of great memories from my time in my childhood playing football with my friends and growing up, and going undefeated in junior high school then when it was junior high, and us going on my senior year in high school winning a state championship.
And what was the community like where you grew up, as far as jobs and economic stability?
Like I said previously, the community, it was nothing but a bunch of hardworking families. A lot of people directed to the coal mines. You had DuPont chemical plant across the river, AEP power plant, Elkin Metals, and a lot of manufacturing type works, up through Eastern Kanawha County. The coal industry was really booming up in Eastern Kanawha County at that time. So really a lot of hard-working families, and a lot of good people. When I was growing up, and still a lot of good people and great people in that community.
Who was your biggest inspiration for wanting to play football when you were very young? Either someone in or someone outside your family. Who encouraged you the most during your early years in football?
Well, like I said, I mentioned my brother. Growing up and just watching him play, and he was always the best football player in my eyes. Always, my favorite player growing up, and I always tried to, compete with him and get on his level. And so he was really my inspiration for playing the game from an early age.
Once you started getting recognition for your football success in high school, who were some of the colleges that started recruiting you before you ultimately chose Marshall?
Well, I mean, honestly, there was, my path to Marshall was a little different. I really didn't understand the recruiting process. Back in those days, it was a little differently. You got letters and stuff like that. And of course, everybody, it's a whole lot different today. But, I can remember taking a visit to Wesleyan, and of course, all the Division II schools here in West Virginia were interested. I have got letters from Penn State. I was actually recruited by WVU, and during my junior year, and then there was a transition change and this, that, and the other, and I had kind of stopped my recruiting going my senior year because I felt like that my path was to Morgantown. And when that situation didn't pan out, it was right before baseball season my senior year, and I was a really good baseball player, and Coach Cal Bailey at West Virginia State, one of the best baseball coaches you ever want to be around. He had came in and recruited me to play baseball, and actually wanted me to come in and be a two-sport athlete at state. And but my love of the game just surpassed baseball, and I decided to walk on at Marshall. I wasn't invited to walk on. I walked on down there in the fall of '97, and I didn't get to join the team till school started.
Once you were at Marshall, what was life playing college football like there? And who inspired you and pushed you the most while you were a college athlete to become a better football player and a better person?
Well, I mean, being a high school football player and having success and things of that nature, sometimes you really realize that you're not as great as what you think you are, and so when I really didn't get those top-notch offers coming out of high school, it really put a chip on my shoulder. And then when I didn't get that opportunity to start at Marshall in the fall of '97, I took a really long path, and the inspiration for me was the fact that people couldn't tell me I couldn't play at that level. I had set a goal out for myself to play Division I football in high school, and I was going to prove to myself and prove to everybody that I could play Division I football, no matter what happened. If I had, whatever I had to do to get on the field and prove to everybody that I could play at that level. And so that was my driving force. It wasn't one single person that I looked up to or emulated or wanted to be like that. It was like a challenge, personal challenge to me to find that. So, when I tell people, and I'll do motivational speaking some throughout the state, and when I tell people, when I started at Marshall, I was number 115. And when I left Marshall, I had a scholarship, I had 2 degrees, I was a team captain, I was a special teams MVP, and I was a 7th round draft pick of the St. Louis Rams.
So while you were at Marshall, did you, like as a student or player, did you run into any problems there?
No. When you're a student athlete, there's hardly ever any time to run into any problems. You're either lifting weights, practicing, conditioning, or studying. From that aspect, I never ran into any problems. If I did, I was fearful of coming home, seeing my mom, and having to explain to her. So I was very well behaved when it comes to those situations.
So because of your level of play at Marshall, you were drafted by the St. Louis Rams in the 2002 NFL draft. If you don't mind, can you kind of just tell me about your NFL career and just how was life in the NFL different from Marshall?
Well, it's everybody's dream to play in the National Football League if you're a football player. And, a lot of people don't know this, but, I tip my hat to Coach Pruitt. He's a legendary coach, but he's more than a coach to me. He's a very, very close friend of mine. And, going in and talking to him, before my senior year, he had kind of told me that, he had some scouts, asking about me and this, that, and the other. And, really encouraged me to come back for my 5th year and, work on my graduate degree and play and see what happens. And maybe I could get invited to a camp. So he was really the first one who gave me an idea that I could, have that opportunity, because sometimes it's far-fetched from where we come from. And so when he said that, I started really, really focusing on my senior year and doing what I needed to do to show the scouts that, I was ready for that level. And, I was able to talk him into letting me do some other things. I had walked on as a linebacker. I played both fullback and linebacker in high school. I knew that it would be a big uphill battle for me to continue at linebacker to play. So I transitioned to long snapping, and, it gave me an opportunity to get on the field. It gave me an opportunity to earn a scholarship and pay for my education, or else I would have had to transfer and transfer down. And, so when that opportunity came about, I got to talk to Coach Pruitt going into my senior year about letting me play other special teams, to show my athletic ability. So he let me play kickoff and let me play punt return. And so I was able to put that on my film. And, after the season was over with, he put me in contact with Tim DePiro, who was Moss's agent at the time. And, he became my agent, and he was my agent my whole career. And we just started putting the pieces together. I was doing all the physical things I needed to do necessary to get ready for the pro day. And he was, speaking with the teams and stuff like that. And, I had, the Rams came in and worked me out. The Vikings came in, Ravens came in and did a private workout with me at Marshall. So, and I got a call on draft day from the Ravens. They wasn't going to draft me. They were going to sign me to as soon as the draft was over with as a undrafted free agent, and so was Minnesota. So, but then the 7th round came around, and then I got a phone call from Coach Martz, said, "Hey, we're getting ready to take you for the with the next pick. We don't want to get in a bidding war with the other teams, and we really, really like you." And so just to get the phone call from Coach Martz on draft day, and having my family and my fiance there was, it's a memorable moment.
Just looking back on your entire playing career through high school and then college and then ultimately the NFL, what are some of the biggest lessons you learned about life, and how did this journey help you become the person you are today?
Well, the first thing I learned, there's no other substitute for football, what it can teach you. If you really sit back and look at it, it teaches you about every phase of life, from the highs to the lows. And it teaches you how to be a man, how to work hard, how to dedicate yourself to something greater than you, how to be selfless, and basically how to deal with adversity. Because, adversity is going to hit you a bunch in your life, and you got to know how to deal with it. And you got to have the tools. And there's no other sport other than football that teaches you how to deal with it, from a team standpoint. And, I just take those lessons that I've learned, and I was really, really fortunate to be around a lot of great coaches that are still my friends today, and to help mold me and guide me and into the humble person I am. And if you have a different coach or a different mentor, you could have been directed towards a different way. But I'm just so thankful that I had, great men as coaches to really that cared about me as a person, not a player. And this game has given me everything. It allowed me to live my dream. It introduced me to my wife. It gave me an education. And but this also broke my heart. From not being highly recruited out of high school, to grinding away at Marshall to earn an opportunity, to getting called up into the owner's box, in my 10th season, and being released, and realize my dream journey is closing, coming to a close. But it's given me so much more than those things, and I've just been very blessed.
And of course, after your career as a player was over, you chose to continue in the sport by coaching and teaching the game to others. I'd say all the stuff you just talked about was inspiration for all that. But what was some of your other inspiration for becoming a coach? And just kind of tell me a little bit about your coaching career after playing college football, if you don't mind.
Well, I had dabbled a little bit into. I never wanted to get into coaching. I see how the coaches worked. That were successful, and I love to do other things and stuff like that. So I really wasn't sure if I wanted to get into coaching and things like that. And I really wanted to get to a point where I could help the kid on an individual basis, from a strength and conditioning standpoint and to a position specific standpoint with, snapping, long snapping and stuff like that, and helping them. So I dabbled in that a little bit. And our community was a great community, and it was a football powerhouse back in the 70s, 80s under legendary Coach McCoy. And I just when we moved here, they were still struggling a little bit, and my kids were young, and my daughter was she was into high school, going into her senior year, and they had a coaching change. And a good friend of mine, Coach Eddie Smolder, was named the new head coach, and him and I played together at Marshall. And he called me and asked me if I wanted to be a part of the staff and help get this thing turned around. And I don't know what happened, what came over me, but I didn't hesitate, to tell him I'd love to, because I knew that, what these kids were. Because there's really good athletes here, and I felt like we could provide them a better opportunity in this sport, and try to get back to the way it used to be in the 80s, with Winfield competing every year in, year out for state championships. And, that was my daughter's senior year, and of course I was, close with all her friends, and, they were a really close group of seniors, and they came in and bought into everything we were giving them, and we just had a magical year. We've had a magical run the last 4 years. We've got things turned around. We're a top 10 AAA program, and and every year you learn something new, just like you do when you were playing. You grow as a person, you grow as a coach, And what I take the most out of is not the wins or losses. I mean, that's not why I do it. Why I do it is for the kids who are coming in here in ninth grade that, might have a question mark, never had an opportunity, or, can't lift the bar in the weight room or anything like that. And then you get them in your program, and year by year they develop and get better. And then all of a sudden that kid that you're scratching your head about in ninth grade, he's a captain as a senior, he's a two-way player, and he gets a scholarship to go to college and play football. That's why I do it. And that's what's so fulfilling for me and our staff, and that's why we have a good culture here at Winfield. And I was coaching high school and youth because my son was in the youth league, so I was double dipping. And so I've just gotten really close with the kids and the families and stuff like that. And so it's really fulfilled that void of me not being a player anymore.
Now, I believe Joey Johnson told me that you were involved in some kind of charity. I think it's called the Basket of Hope program. If you don't mind, just kind of talk about that and just how important is it to give back in that way after a successful playing career.
Well, Basket of Hope is a charity that was founded in St. Louis. Usually when a kid is recently diagnosed with cancer, the foundation visits the kid and the family after they've had the bad news, and the family's offered some motivational materials and some scriptures, and the kids offered a basket of gifts and stuff like that. And we start the journey from there, and was visiting those kids in the hospital and just try to, if we can put a smile on their face, for 30 minutes or 45 minutes from what they're going through, and help them in any way is kind of what was found. So I got involved with it there, and then when I went to Chicago, I was a chapter member there, and Robbie Gould and I, we delivered baskets during Super Bowl week out there in Chicago. And then when I moved home, my wife and I started our own branch here in Charleston, West Virginia at Women's and Children's, and it was active. We had it active for several years, and with recent activity and stuff like that, we had to close the branch down, but we still get around to the visitations and stuff like that, and kind of fund and forward people to other cancer charities and stuff like that. But we try to do what we can here in the community, and if somebody needs something, we're only a phone call away.
Absolutely, and just kind of piggybacking off that, I mean, just what's the the meaning and the significance of just doing that, for people and just athletes doing that after successful careers,
Well, I think it's important that if you have a platform, whether you're a doctor, lawyer, or whatever, if you have grinded through life and you have got yourself onto a platform to where you can give back to your community and give back to the kids and stuff like that, I think you have an obligation to do that as a decent human being. And fortunately, I had an opportunity and a platform in the National Football League to where I can come back and use my experiences and what got me there to come back here, come back to my hometown, to any small town in West Virginia, and talk to the kids about, hey, I did it. I didn't have a stoplight in my town, okay? We only had 140 kids in our graduating class. If I can do it, why can't you do it? So, those are the kind of things, and if I can just change one kid, it's all worth it.
Just for any kid like you all coach at Winfield, if they go on to college, or if they're lucky enough to go on to the pros, or really just for anybody you coach, what is the biggest lessons that you hope they take away, and like what do you hope? How are you hoping that they can give back, if they go on to have successful careers?
Well, I hope that everybody has an opportunity to pay it forward. If they go on and for something that they have learned and took from us, took from our program, and they were able to go to college, play college football and gain that knowledge, that experience. I would hope that when it's time for them to pay it forward, or their sons or daughters or whatever was coming up through athletics, that they can take what they learned in football. It didn't have to be, they don't have to play football, but you can take what you learn in football and apply it to the youth in whatever sport it is. And I was hoping that they would just take that and really pay it forward to the next generation.
And
And realize that when you play for me, and I'm your coach for life. So pick the phone up, call me if you need me. In 20 years, I'll be there.
Absolutely. And is there anything else on your heart or on your mind that you want to throw out there that you think viewers of this story should know?
Well, I mean, dreams come true. Don't always settle. Continue chasing your dreams, and continue chasing greatness. And I chose not to listen to the naysayers. I chose to follow my own path and chase my greatness and chase my dream. And if you work hard enough, it all pays off. I tell my son all the time, and I tell our kids, whatever you put into the sport, you'll get back out of it tenfold. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow. At some point in time, you're going to reap the rewards of how hard you've worked and what you've put into it. So.
For sure. Buddy, that should be all I need. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
man. Thank you.
I appreciate it. It was great meeting you. And also one more.